Today, we're exposing one of the most idiotic government policies you've ever seen. Yes, Rishi Sunak's government are releasing prisoners early due to overcrowding in prisons. Yeah, because that's going to be the perfect solution for the chaos of the prison system right now. So, Rishi Sunak and his buddy, Dominic Rob, was in charge of justice in all these areas, are proudly talking about how, well, some prisoners, we need to basically release them early because we don't have enough space in prisons. Instead of actually coming up with a long-term plan when it comes to the capacity of prisons, as well as actual prevention of crimes and everything else, and education system, no. Let's just basically take a risk, take a gamble, and release them quite early. This is really weird what's happening right now. And I'm going to talk about which MPs have actually opposed this, and I'm going to give them a massive shout out. So, prisoners are to be released early due to overcrowding. Now, the length of time that inmates can spend at home wearing a tag is also going to increase from 135 days to 180 days. Again, to help with capacity. This is a classic, these sort of problems happen and exist in dictatorships when, for example, in a country like Iran, and I know a few people in Iran that are political prisoners, and when the regime go around and arresting everybody left, right, and center and make them political prisoners, and their prisons get overcrowded, and then what they end up doing is they basically say, going forward, if we arrest anybody else for protesting and turning them into political prisoners, we're just going to keep them at their own homes with tags and a security guard standing outside their house. That's what happens because those places are dictatorships, because they're just arresting everybody left, right, and center. In a civilized society that in the West is so-called democracy, that with a technically good education system, technically good employment opportunities and everything else, we shouldn't really have this. Firstly, we should be able to prevent crime to not get to this level. But at the same time, you need to do something about the prisons themselves, the prison system, and the capacity of it. Instead of releasing them early, that makes no sense. So there were a number of Conservative MPs who actually voted against this, unsuccessfully, unfortunately. But I'm going to give them a massive shout out. We've got Peter Bone, well done Peter Bone, Philip Hollowbone, Stephen McFarlane, we've got Matthew Offord, we've got Desmond Swain, Sir Desmond Swain, Christopher Chope, we've got Andrew Jenkins, we've got Esther McVeigh of GB News, and we've got Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, well done Priti, we've got Justin Tomlinson, Richard Drax, Pauline Latham, Nigel Mills, and Henry Smith, the MP for Crawley, who's actually my former boss when I used to work in Parliament. Massive shout out to every single one of these guys who voted and opposed this idea. Unfortunately, the rest of Parliament were sleeping that day. They were washing their hair. They just turned a blind eye. They buried their head in the sand and they went along with it. Priti Patel specifically is not really happy about the situation. She's actually come out to slam the government massively, saying that a Conservative government should be committed to maintaining law and order, keeping the public safe, and supporting victims of crime. Letting prisoners out early undermines public safety and confidence in the justice system. And I absolutely agree with Priti Patel. Obviously, I'm always objective. When she was Home Secretary, I criticized her on many issues. But when someone says something right or does something right, I always praise them. And this is one of those situations. Don't really care who it is. I'm not really one of those tribal people who just say, well, whatever the person I don't like says, I'm just going to disagree for the sake of it. If tomorrow Keir Starmer comes out with the perfect policy to fix the country, I will back him. But that's never going to happen. Of course that's not going to happen. There's a reason for that. But it is what it is. Now, by the way, this is not the first time Dominic Rob has had issues with this prison system. We had this news a while ago that prisoners may have been set free in error thanks to Dominic Rob's unlawful parole board reforms. So judges in the High Court found that the rule change by Justice Secretary was unlawful. Not just unlawful, that's not the main, I mean, that's also a big issue, but that's not the main problem of this chaos. It was that it created more mistakes. The attempt to reform the parole board completely messed up the whole system and the whole structure, that it basically meant the bureaucracy level was so low that some prisoners were just set free. And they were supposed to stay in there. They were supposed to stay and get their punishment. And some of them were not really supposed to be free anyway, because they were always a danger to society. But the computer said, yep, you're free, you're free, you're free. Imagine if you're one of those prisoners, like, are you sure? Can I really go? Oh, okay, fine. And go out there and join the gangs again. This is absolutely chaotic. These sort of stuff, it's these sort of news stories that we should really have. BBC, Sky News, Channel 4, GB News, all the channels talking about this right now on TV for the next few hours. Do a proper inquiry, do investigations. No, that's not happening. They're more busy and concerned about Boris Johnson's birthday cake. Yesterday, the whole news cycle was about that. Luckily, on this channel, we also covered other stories as well as that. But this is not really how the news cycle should work. We even had, what was it, a few days ago, a week ago, when the banking system was going down, everything else was crashing. Then the media were just busy chasing Gary Lineker around the streets in the UK. You have to cover these stories. You have to actually raise awareness. You have to talk about the potential investigations. Hold the power to account. It's not rocket science, but we keep telling them, but they're not going to listen. It's okay. We're still here. We still get more views than the rest of the mainstream media, thanks to you and your support. So you guys hopefully will share this video with your family members and neighbors and friends. People will know about these news stories because we're talking about this, even if it's not on BBC. Thank you so much for your support. I'm Mahyar, Tousi, and we are the media.